Pokemon Reborn is a completed Pokemon fan game with 18 gyms, a whole new region, multiple routes where the story will play out differently, a whole new mechanic called Field Effects which drastically changed the direction of battle, and is notoriously known for being one of the hardest Pokemon fan games to date, where all major trainers have full teams with EV trained Pokemon. I'm going to be playing this game for the first time and seeing if I can defeat Pokemon Reborn. Is what I would be saying if I had already completed the game last year when the final version actually dropped. Okay, so I know I'm probably the world's worst procrastinator since I actually first started playing the game like April of last year, completed it around May time, and I just have 100 hours worth of footage that I haven't edited. But we're finally here, we're finally making this video. I've gotten the chance to replay Pokemon Reborn recently entirely and go through all the routes that I didn't do the first time. So from last year to this year, I want to give you guys my full thoughts of Pokemon Reborn, what I think of it, what I liked, what I didn't like. And with that, let's start the video. Okay, let's start off with the money question. Is Pokemon Reborn the hardest Pokemon fan game to date? I wouldn't say Pokemon Reborn is the hardest Pokemon fan game to date. It's difficult, yes, but I'd argue it's fairly reasonable difficulty for what it offers. In terms of difficulty, as long as you know the basics of competitive Pokemon, what EVs are, what IVs are, or like what basic moves a Pokemon might run, like you could probably guess that Mega Charizard Y is going to run Solar Beam or Primal Kyogre is going to have Origin Pulse. As long as you know stuff like that, you could probably get through the game very, very easily. You can easily get to Gym 16 without much issue in that regard. Also, I'd argue the game has really good level design, where the game progressively gets harder, but there are no drastic difficulty spikes that just ruin the player experience. For example, the first two gyms are Electric and Grass. So you would think, oh no, I chose the Water type starter, I'm going to struggle a lot because there aren't that many options early game. You'll most likely be fine since the level cap at the first gym is 20 and Julia's Ace is only level 15. Plus the moves it has available aren't really that well. And Florina for the second gym isn't really that difficult either because her Ace doesn't even have a Grass type move. So when I say Pokemon Reborn is generous with its difficulty, I do mean it, because chances are if you're struggling with a gym, there's one or two Pokemon nearby that you can catch that will just breeze through the gym no problem. It's not like the official games where you can just put together a team of Pokemon and just run through the entire game. I'd argue that for each gym, as long as you know the typing going into it and you prepare for that typing, then you'll obviously be fine. Now the game's main gimmick is Field Effects, where it will generally multiply a typing's damage, nullifying another type's damage. It makes some moves stronger, makes some moves weaker. So you would probably listen to that and think to yourself, okay, that would make a lot of battles hard, right? But with Pokemon Reborn, you could easily overwrite a field effect. The Ice Gym Leader Sarah has a Mirror Field, which essentially plays with accuracy and evasiveness the entire time, but you could use Earthquake to destroy that field. I'm actually going to show the footage on the screen right now of my first attempt. I just Earthquake the field, break it, and I managed to sweep her without much difficulty. And that applies for most of the game as well. If you have a Pokemon with like Misty Surge or even Grassy Surge, you can easily overwrite a field, making stuff like the Elemental Seeds or the field effects that were built in pretty useless, and it makes most strategies fall apart. Also, the game gives you a lot of cheese mons, like Imposter Ditto or Sturdy Aeron. You get Pokemon like those fairly early, like around Gym 5, Gym 6, and they can just nuke through most of the early game, making most bosses essentially easy. For example, you can get an Aggron early on, give it Sturdy, give it Metal Burst, it lives one hit, nukes any opponent on the field. Now the battle with Solars on the volcano is probably one of the most iconic fights in Pokemon Reborn, because you're facing a level 75 Garchomp with a team of 30s with like late 30s, low 40s. So you would think there's no way for you to beat that, but you get Imposter Ditto around that time, and on my first try, Ditto actually did a lot of damage. I still ended up losing, but that showed that even in cases where the game tries to throw a lot at you, you could easily get past the bosses. For example, Solaris is Garchomp, Elias is Arceus. The game doesn't expect you to win those battles. Is it difficult to win them? Yes, but the game doesn't expect you to win. So that's why I say the game is generous with its difficulty, at least until Gym 16. Because Gym 16, they start doing gauntlets where you battle multiple trainers in a row without healing. And during the invasion of Labradora, all the grunts have like 252 EV'd in every stats, along with 31 IV spreads, so that makes it nearly impossible to one-hit their Pokemon. So, if I had to use an analogy, right? Most of the game is just basic thinking. It's only after Gym 16, or like around Saphira, where it starts to match Drayano or Kaizo level difficulty. So I'd argue most people could play the game and enjoy it, especially with what the passwords offer to Pokemon Reborn. So at the beginning of the game, you can enter a bunch of passwords that will allow you to just modify your own playthrough. You can give yourself the Mega Ring and Z Ring early on. You can make it so that there's no such thing as a damage roll. You can even remove EVs from the entire game, or you could add EVs to the entire game. So going back to the original question, is Pokemon Reborn the hardest fan game? Vanilla, unmodified Reborn, I'd argue is pretty doable. And with the password, it's especially convenient for anyone to play. So if you've been holding off on this game because of its supposed difficulty, I don't think you would need to worry. I think everyone can get something out of this game, whatever kind of difficulty you're looking for. Now please note for this video, I'm going to be talking about the entire game, like there's going to be major spoilers. So if you haven't played it, click off this video, play it, and come back. Because I'm talking about everything, the main game, the post game, the alternate routes, everything. Okay, starting off with the story, Pokemon Reborn is a second try or second loop story, in which the main characters fail the first time, so the entire game is essentially a second try at beating the bad guy. Now, what originally happened with Pokemon Reborn, right, is that Lynn, the main antagonist of the game, blew up the train station at the beginning of the game, killing both the champion and the player character in one fell swoop, which in turn allowed Team Meteor to essentially accelerate through the entire game, winning at every possible scenario because there was no one really to push back against it. He had already lost their champion. So what Anna ended up doing was making a wish for Jirachi to reverse time and bring a trainer strong enough to defeat Lynn, who's obviously going to be the main player. Like, what do you think this is? ReZero where Reinhardt's going to save the day? No, you have to be the one to save the day. So what ends up happening is that Jirachi reverses time, sends Shade, the Ghost-type gym leader, to save both the champion Amy and the player character from the train's explosion, and the game will just play out from there because you don't learn about the loops until later. Now one thing Pokemon Reborn does is showcasing how grim the region actually is. Because of Team Meteor, they've essentially been ruining the entire climate and environment of the Reborn region. Let's list off a couple of things they've done. They've poisoned the water supply, caused mass forestation throughout the entire region, literally blocked off mountains with giant cases of ice, nearly caused a volcano to erupt, mass terrorism, they starved a village, oh, and they also tried to end the world. Now, Team Meteor's main goal in this game is to drive out the people of the Reborn region because the Reborn region is actually atop a meteorite which originally contained Arceus when it was born. So they're essentially a bunch of religious fanatics which believe, okay, you guys need to go now. You're disrespecting Arceus' resting place. Or birthplace? Would it be birthplace or resting place? I don't know. But in the process, they actually end up recruiting Lynn, who's sort of like the game's main antagonist, but she doesn't really become the main antagonist until the post-game. Now, Lynn herself, I would equate Lynn to like Flowey from Undertale or Sephiroth from Final Fantasy. She obviously knows more than she lets on, and she just has this aura about being unstoppable. Now, Lynn as an antagonist is a mixed bag, because you only learn about her story in the post-game, and you can actually kill her during the main game, where she has no impact on the post-game, so you're sort of like, oh, you're giving this character development, but they're already dead. That's why I say it's kind of a mixed bag with Lynn, because her backstory is that she was abandoned by her parents and abused in Dr. Connell's orphanage. Dr. Connell did shock therapy to all the orphans, believing that that was the best way to educate them or put them in line. So what eventually happened was that Lynn ended up breaking out of the orphanage, meeting up with a girl named Tara, who was the ground-type gym leader. But she couldn't feel at home with Tara and her family, so she ended up running away from there, sneaking under Reborn City, which is atop the meteorite, falling into Arceus' resting place, and actually meeting Arceus and kickstarting the events of the entire game. Because Lynn's entire goal throughout the game is just to have fun. That's it. Like all the deaths, all the genocides, all the mass terrorism. Because for Lynn, making other characters suffer is fun. And this is one thing I like about Pokemon Reborn. the characters are just so edgy. Like, I don't know, the game is just really dark. Like, chances are there's at least one morally questionable character that you'll fall in love with. Like, whether it be Solaris, Elias, Bennett, Fern. Oh, who am I kidding? Nobody likes Fern. The cast is really big, so chances are there's more than one character you're going to fall in love with. Especially my boy Taka. Can't forget about him. I guess that leads into also the cons of the game, because first off, with the main game, the cast is really big, so it becomes very hard to keep track of certain plot lines. For example, it becomes hard to keep track of who's died, who's where, who knows who. So the game sort of puts itself into a position where characters are constantly being reintroduced or introducing themselves again for the first time to a new set of characters. And I feel like that does slow the game down a bit. And another thing I don't like about the game all that much is that it becomes very repetitive after a while. Because the game falls into a habit where you deal with Team Meteor, you get a gym badge, you deal with Team Meteor again, you get a gym badge, you deal with Team Meteor again. You see where this is going? The game falls into that pattern a lot. Even though the plot lines are very differently, where it revolves around different characters, different arcs, and there are a bunch of character arcs which you'd probably enjoy. That's the pattern the game mostly falls in line with. And I would be sitting here all day if I tried to recount every single plot line introduced or every character arc that each character goes through. I sort of wish the game would have been less repetitive, but I also understand why, because the level cap only increases by 5 for each gym badge you get, with like the exception of 2 gyms where you just don't increase the level cap at all. So level progression is slow, story progression is slow, and the game has to make up for that by introducing a lot of characters, with a bunch of different stories, and character arcs. The chances are if you don't like one character or one story arc, chances are you'll maybe like the next or the one before that or the one after that, yada yada. Now one thing I really like about this game is the different routes, because there are about 4 main routes, 2 in the main game, 2 in the post game. And these routes play out differently depending on your actions, whether or not you battled someone, whether or not you decided to ignore a person, or not this character is dead. The game plays into 4 main routes. For the main game, there's the Reshiram and Zekrom routes. Now, what's the biggest differentiator for this route is whether you battle Taka at the Water Treatment Center. Now, the Water Treatment Center, it's real that Taka is not really a bad guy. He doesn't really care about Team Meteor, or at the very least doesn't really support what they're doing. So he sort of helps the player and Titania out with recovering Saphira and requiring some of the keys throughout the game. Now, the issue is Taka wants compensation for it. It's like, hey, I helped you guys out. Do you think you can battle me, defeat me, so that it at least looks like I tried? But whether or not you battle him will make the game divide massively, because if you do battle him, you're sent onto the Zekrom route, where Taka will remain part of Team Meteor until later, but he'll defect much later on. And if you don't battle him, he's going to be put on the chopping block by Lyn, because any character in Team Meteor who constantly fails is killed off by Lyn. So if Taka doesn't get defeated by you, then Lyn's going to have her eye on him and kill him off earlier in the game. And that's just one example of how the story may play out differently for certain characters. Because another difference between the Reshiram and Zekrom route is a relationship you have with Saphira. In the Reshiram route, Saphira hates you. Like, she gives you a chance in her gym battle to do a single or double battle. But in the Reshiram route, she'll do the opposite of what you want to do, because she borderline hates you and blames you for Titania breaking up with her. It also plays into the relationship system where, depending on what characters you interact with, what responses you give, how you defeat them in battle. But the more you bond with a character, the chances are you'll see an after story with them in the game's ending credits. Now, I know my thoughts are probably all over the place in this video, but I just want to talk about the post-game and what I liked about it before I end this video. Now, for the post-game, you have the Anna route and Lyn route. So the main difference between these routes is whether or not you killed Lyn during the final battle of the main game, where she managed to free Arceus, morph into a Pulse Pokemon. Now, by default, you're going to get the Lyn route, unless you do very specific things throughout the game which entitles you to defeat Lyn once and for all on the Anna route. I'm pretty sure some requirements to get the Anna route are you have to defeat Solaris on the volcano, you have to be on the Reshiram route, so that means, unfortunately, Taka has to die. Sad times. So the main plot line of the post-game is that Lyn opened up the new world, which is generating a bunch of legendary Pokemon all over the world. So part of this plan was to recreate the world, but because Lyn dies during the main routes, the new world is just left out of control, generating legendaries left and right. I'm pretty sure there was a segment where some of the gym leaders are facing like 20 Genesects back to back. Now, the difference between the two routes is that in the Lyn route, Lyn is still alive and she's actually having the player clean up her mess. It's like she's generating the new worlds and just telling the player, hey, go deal with that. Whereas in the Anna route, she's sort of like leading you, making things easier. It's like, hey, there's a new world here, I need you to fix it up. And that opens up a lot of plot lines of legendary Pokemon, which will help inevitably clean up the character arcs of certain characters. Some of my favorite quests of the post-game involve Magearna, Darkrai, Celebi, and Dialga and Palkia. Now I'll just quickly go over them since those were my favorites. In the Magearna quest, Flora from Pokemon Rejuvenation, a younger Flora, comes to Pokemon Reborn, where she hopes to make her own pulse machine, which we end up actually seeing in Pokemon Rejuvenation itself with the pulse. I think it was a pulse Musharna. Was it? Yeah. And I found that side quest funny because I know what Flora ends up doing in Pokemon Rejuvenation. And I do like the little nods in her team, like she has her Mega Venusaur, she has a full grass team because she's a grass type gym leader, she has her Ferrothorn, which later turns into a Rift Ferrothorn. So I do like the little nods for Rejuvenation, as well as the fact that most characters in the game can't seem to stand her, because there's this little mini segment where you get to go through the entire Pokemon League with her, and she's just talking shit to everyone. Seriously. Every single character in the game has something to say about her, and they all just dislike her to some degree, and I fucking love it. I also love the Darkrai quest. I remember playing a very beta version of Pokemon Desolation. I think it was like episode 2, episode 3 maybe, I forget. But you get to visit a part of Pokemon Desolation and meet Shiv, one of the main characters from that game. And he's just messing with you the entire time. It's like, I don't really remember his personality, but just seeing Shiv in this game made me want to go back and play the newest episode of Pokemon Desolation, because I'm pretty sure that game got updated. So they get Darkrai's homeboy to come over and just mess with everyone, and just mess with the main character. Example, you have a battle with him, he turns all your Pokemon to level 1 just to troll you, to stop you from leaving. And then he subsequently makes you battle every single Pulse Pokemon back to back, including the Pulse Pokemon that you never had to fight. Seriously, there's a Pulse Cam, and this is the most, I want to talk about this Pulse Camera. That Pulse Camera was bullshit. 1 year later, and I still remember just how cheesy that Pulse Camera was. So the main game, that Pulse Camera gets destroyed before you have to battle it. But in the post game, because you're in a dreamscape, you actually get to battle it and just realize how out of your league that Pokemon actually is. Like, Pulse Camerupt is on par with Pulse Arceus, which how did they even do that? It has 1 HP, Wonder Guard, so the game forces you to attack the left side first, while Camerupt just does nuke damage to your team. It just makes it incredibly difficult to deal with. So the fact that you actually had to face all the pulses back to back at like level 120, 130 was funny. Like, that's the Kaizo level difficulty of the game that I was talking about. I also love the Celebi event with Elias because, I'll be honest, I didn't like Elias before that event, but that storyline with him, with us going through time with Celebi and Elias, made me love his character. But yeah, you actually get sent back in time and meet one of Taka's ancestors who have both a Garchomp, which is Solaris' ace, and a Chatot, which is Taka's ace, as well as going forward in time and battling the new champion of the Reborn region, because you were gone for like 10-15 years. And the champion ends up being the person that you least expect to be champion, Shelly. She was a fairly minor character, but she had her own arc where she had to become independent and competent, and guess what? She completes her character arc and you get to battle champion Shelly. You also get to battle Amethyst before she dies. Is that a spoiler? You guys should have played the game by now. Yeah, you also get to battle Amethyst as the champion before she dies, so I guess that's cool as well. But my favorite one was the Dialga and Palkia events, solely because they brought my boy Taka back to life. Let's go! It's like you literally go back to the moment he dies, rips him from that time, and then you get to bring him back to life. That easily made it my favorite. Was it the most creative one? No, but they brought back my boy Taka, so full marks right there. And then the final aspect of the post-game, which is the Dreamscape New World Asylum. You come to find out that Anna is sick with something called the Dream Sickness. I think that's what it was called. It's eluding my mind right now. Throughout the post-game, no one remembers she exists, and she was the one that gave the entire world a second chance in the first place. She's being casually erased from reality, and the new world is starting to affect her, where she thinks Lyn is still alive, even though she's long dead. So you have this final battle of Anna, you manage to save her from the dream sickness and being completely erased from reality, REM style. And in the Lyn route, you have the final battle with Lyn, where you essentially just adopt her after the fact. Lyn learns that you're not a player character, you're not a vessel. Because Lyn, she knows that your character is not exactly real. So throughout the game, she acts with that knowledge where, hey, I know you're not real, and this plays into one of my favorite aspects of the game. If you lose to Lyn during the final battle during the main game, the game will close itself and there'll be a pop-up on the screen where it's like, go reeve in your own incompetence, or something like that. So Lyn knows the world is a game. She knows that your player character is just a vessel for you. So she acts with that knowledge and just doesn't care what you do. She just wants to have fun and mess with you because technically you're the only person she sees as real. But you actually get the choice of saving Lyn before battling Arceus. If you go straight for Arceus, Lyn will fall for her death. But if you go to save Lyn beforehand and then defeat Arceus, you essentially get to adopt her. And because of the relationship system, if you save Lyn, you get plus 100 relationship points with her and a special end credits scene with her. And you bring Lyn to a club hosting the entire cast that she fucked with. And just, it is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Because literally, the music cuts off and the entire cast looks at Lyn like, the fuck? Why'd you bring her here? Why is she not dead? Like literally, in that moment, it is simultaneously the most awkward and funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I swear to God, seeing it again after a year just makes me cry and cry because of how funny it is. That's another prop I'll give this game. It's unironically funny. Like there are just so many moments with characters in this game where they just make you bust out loud laughing. Especially when Kane says something sus. It's like you literally have to do a double take like, wait, what? Alright, so that's the end of this video. I just really wanted to talk about Reborn, what I liked about it, what I disliked about it. And if I had to give it a rating, it would easily be a 10 out of 10. I think everyone should play it at least once. And it's completed. There are no extra updates you need to wait for. It's completed and you can play it now. It's free. As long as you have a computer or an Android phone, you can play it. So there's really no point not to. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, click that bell down below, leave a comment about what your thoughts on the game were. I'm going to leave the download link in the description down below. And fun fact, this game has a very dedicated modding community. There's a Generation 8 and 9 mod that adds Dynamax Megas, which are Gigantamaxes converted to Mega Evolutions. And I saw another mod where they add Pokemon and typings from Pokemon Uranium into the game. So if you want to play with nuclear Pokemon in the Reborn region, you can do that. But I'm rambling on. This is the end of the video. Hope you all enjoyed. Peace.